Hey everyone, Joe here. If you want to make your bass guitars sound more interesting and stand out in your mixes, then take a look at this tip I'm going to show you today. I'm going to show you how to take a plain old bass guitar track and turn it into something a little more suiting of a heavy rock song. I'm going to go through how I recorded it and all the individual things I did to mix it. There are 3 main steps that I really want to show you today on getting this bass sounding just right. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more weekly recording and mixing tips. Let's get to it. So first, let's take a look at this DI bass track that we've got. It's nice and smooth, it's warm, it's well played. And I've processed that already with EQ. I've compressed it quite hard with the 1176 clone, and I've just dropped a little bit of that low end out to let the kick peek through, and we've boosted up the bass with the Waves R bass. And with the rest of the band, okay, so it's sounding nice. I'm happy with the general sound of the bass. But then, as you see, the guitars drop out there. So if all we've got is that DI bass, let's hear what happens when the guitar drops out. Okay, so it still sounds fine, but it loses so much. And because we've got so many guitars going on, it's really quite a heavy track. And just dropping down to that DI bass, it sounds just a bit plain, a bit too clean. So what I did in the recording stage is I mic'd up an amp as well, which is recorded with an Audix i5, which is not specifically a mic generally used for recording bass guitars, but as we're layering it with the DI bass, you'll see what happens. First, let's have a listen to what the amped bass sounds like. So it's still a nice recording. It's got a little bit less low end on there. But then what I've done is I've cut out a lot of the low end with a high pass filter, boosted up the highs, and then again compressed it quite heavily. But then I've added this decapitator, this distortion plugin. Now you could use any distortion plugin for this trick. If you're using Pro Tools, there are a couple. There's the Air Distortion and the Sans amp that come with Pro Tools, or any DAW you're using. There should be a distortion plugin that you can use. So let's have a listen with these plugins applied. Okay, so really crunchy, quite bright bass guitar sound. On its own, that wouldn't cut through, that wouldn't fill out the low end. But let's hear what happens when it kicks in on this break in the guitars. So it just fills out that top end a little bit of gravel, so that it's not such a harsh drop in heaviness when the guitars come out. Let's have a listen on their own. Yeah. And then what it does by only having it in this section, it kind of breaks up the song a little bit. It makes it a bit more fluid, changes throughout. And also, I don't want it in what the guitars are in, because it'd just be too much distortion. It would start getting a bit messy, hard to tell what's what. And let's talk about the volume. So obviously the volume is going to increase when that second bass guitar comes in. But that's okay, because the guitars are coming out. So it doesn't feel like a sudden increase in volume at all. It's quite smooth. And then what I've done is when the guitars start gradually coming back in, I've just brought down the volume of the second bass a little bit, and then it comes completely out when the chorus starts again with the guitars. Let's have a listen. So with those wide guitars, it really brings out the mix in the chorus, and you don't really notice the bass disappearing, because you don't want the listener to notice the changes that you're making. You just want it to sound good to them. Now I want to show you one last tip here for preventing your low mids from getting a bit muddy, because even though we've cut the low end out of the recorded amped guitar, we're still getting quite a fair low mids boost when that comes in, and it can start getting a little bit muddy, especially when the guitars start coming back in. So I've sent both the bass guitars through a bus and added a multi-band compressor on the bus. So what this is doing is only compressing certain frequency bands, and this one's particularly focusing on that low mid section. So when that DI bass is playing, it's not doing a huge amount. It's compressing there a little bit. But then when the second bass comes in, it's going a little bit harder, going down to about 3 or 4 dBs of reduction. That's quite a subtle effect, but if we listen back to back, it's just stopping that low mid section from getting a little bit too muddy when you've got both the guitars in there. So that's one way I like to blend DI bass and amp bass guitar together. There are obviously infinite ways you could do it. This is just one really cool trick you can use, especially if you've got sections in the song that are a little sparse. You can use that amp guitar to boost it up a little bit. And please leave a comment below. Let me know if you record your bass guitar through DI, through an amp, or through both. It'd be really interesting to get a discussion going, find out how everyone records their basses. I'm here every week, so subscribe if you want more. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.